What's one thing you used to believe, but now think is completely wrong? Story 1. I used to think I had to do something great with my life in order to justify my existence. I don't care about that anymore, and I'm much happier. I have a few good friends and a dog that I love, plus some hobbies that bring me joy or satisfaction, and I don't need much more than that. Story 2. I used to believe that you always had to put other people's interests before your own in order to be a good person. Now I realize that this is wrong, and it is important to take care of yourself, set boundaries, and find a balance between helping others and your own needs. Story 3. That hard work and education always paid off. If people didn't succeed, it's because they didn't want to. Oh man, was I wrong. I've learned not to judge people, that life isn't always linear, and sometimes you can do everything right, but not be in the position you thought you'd be. Story 4. One thing I used to believe growing up was that conflict is inherently negative and should be avoided at all costs. I thought that avoiding it would keep the peace and protect relationships. But over time, especially through my work, I've come to realize that conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be a catalyst for growth, understanding, and even stronger relationships if handled correctly. Now, I see conflict as an opportunity to listen, learn, and find solutions that benefit everyone involved. It's not the conflict itself that's the problem, but how we approach and resolve it. Story 5. I used to believe that both Democrats and Republicans wanted what was best for the country, but they just had differing ideas on the best way to get there. Once Trump came along, that idea vanished. I disagreed with people like Romney and McCain, but I did think they wanted what was best for the country, even George W. Bush to a point. But the fact that so many people were willing to put Trump in office, and many of them are voting for him for a third time, just shows that they want a very specific America, not necessarily what is best for the country. Story 6. That gun control wouldn't work because criminals won't care and people who want guns will get them. I work in cybersecurity now, and I see a lot of parallel between gun control and network defenses. There are certain attackers who will get into your network no matter what, but even if they do, the defenses can slow them down and make it more likely they're noticed before they have a chance to do much. And not every attacker is similarly motivated or able, so defenses will fend off a lot of them entirely. Story 7. I used to believe that having everything figured out, every plan, every answer, would give me peace and security. But over time, I've realized that life doesn't work that way. The more I tried to control and predict, the more stressed I became. Now, I'm learning that it's okay not to have all the answers, and that there's a certain peace in embracing uncertainty. It's not easy, but being open to the unknown has allowed me to grow in ways I never expected. Story 8. I used to believe that the United States of America really was the best country in the world. I grew up being told and taught this and had no reason to believe otherwise. Then I studied overseas in Europe during college. Now I marvel at how backwards the United States truly is. Story 9. I used to think dogs were better pets, but I'm more of a cat person now. I still like dogs. However, they are a lot of responsibility and a lot of work. Gotta walk them twice a day, play with them often, and that's on top of training them when they are pups. Cats are more self-sufficient. They just do what they want and are a lot less work. Story 10. I used to think that people are mostly rational and can work through problems. Most people have a script in their head to do this when that happens, but there is very little thought behind this. They mostly learn these behaviors by copying other people. Most people, when faced with an extremely simple but novel problem, can't solve it on the fly. They can given enough time, but on the fly it's usually fire, randomly, and miss. They don't know how to get directly to the root cause. Story 11. That the only reason people were poor was because they were lazy and entitled. Then I actually tried to learn about why poverty happens in a country like the US, and learned that that's not even close to the actual reason most people are poor. That's not to say there aren't poor people that got there because they're lazy and entitled, but just that most people aren't poor because of that. Story 12. When I was a little kid, I used to think that police and judges could do anything they wanted and get away with it and that they were above the law. Then I grew up some and realized that wasn't true at all. Then I grew up some more and realized it was absolutely true. Story 13. That I was incredibly ugly. Everyone told me I was all the time growing up, it seemed. I'm very attractive. That's why most people treat me so incredibly weirdly. It took me to now at 32 to realize this. Before, I thought I was ugly, weird, too skinny, or there was just something majorly wrong with me, as that's what so many people told me every day, and it seemed no one was ever on my side. It was just jealousy, extreme jealousy, but it has destroyed my life entirely. I've just hidden away from the world for most of my life to avoid abuse. Story 14. That people who are nice to you, to your face, actually think and speak highly of you when you're not around. including extended family. Growing up, I was the son of a well-known and highly respected doctor in town, and everyone always treated me so great. The minute he died, though, it was very clear that they just tolerated me. They basically wouldn't give me the time of day anymore. And yes, again, extended family included. Story 15 used to believe the Twin Towers were demolished and not from the planes. I used to be so sure. Thought I was stating the obvious. 6 years of engineering and architecture, physics. Now I understand exactly how it happened and how it changed skyscraper construction forever. Story 16. If you are kind to people, people will be kind to you. That's not true, and it's actually dangerous advice. I would say instead that you should save your kindness, but tolerate everyone to be best of your ability. By saving your kindness, you'll have plenty left when you meet those who deserve it. Story 17. I used to think the only thing that mattered in attracting the opposite was achievement, school, career, athletics, etc., and then was amazed when men who I perceived to be less successful than me attracted the same women I did, or even ones that weren't available to me. I now believe it's because these men didn't hate themselves, were honest and emotionally secure while I wasn't. Story 18. That one day after a number of good years of working and really saving, I'd be able to afford a down payment for a small house with my old lady in Ontario. Then this post-COVID decimation of affordable anything happened. Now I'm living with my parents again and can't find a job. I don't even believe I'd be able to afford a 1 BDRM apartment even if I found one. Story 19. Before I retired, I thought that there was so much to learn from my fellow colleagues in higher managerial positions or with more years of experience. Turns out that's not usually the case. Most people are morons. Same goes for thinking you'll get ahead at your job by doing more and giving 110% effort. They pay you the same to do bare minimum. Story 20. That school refusal avoidance has to be pushed through because abuse avoiding it only makes anxiety worse. Some kids are just not destined to thrive in mainstream educational settings, and forcing them to keep turning up them is almost cruel. Not all kids, of course, but definitely for some. Story 21. Have to do all of the things. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. You're weak or a loser. Asking for help means you failed. It's vital to have people say, "She did all of that and didn't complain she's so strong and such a go-getter." Nope, she's burned out, pissed off, stressed, and unhappy, but keeping it all inside in order to be perceived as perfect. Yeah, not doing that anymore. If you think I'm weak or less than, that's on you, not me. I know what I'm capable of and I know my worth. Story 22. That social media and the World Wide Web were going to bring about positive changes in society, making it a place where people can connect with other people for democratic and moral ideals, and where hate will eventually lose as everyone sees it for what it is. Story 23. I used to believe, even at the time the movie JFK was out, that there was some conspiracy. I'd read all the bull books, but once I had become better informed, I understood the conspiracy stuff was garbage. Oswald was the only person who fired shots in Dealey Plaza. Oswald was a secretive weirdo, so it's possible there was some conspiracy. But if there was, it didn't benefit him in the least. He died an absolute pauper, and there is no evidence that anyone else was involved. A lot of people have made a lot of money promoting conspiracy, though. Story 24. I don't consider myself terribly spiteful of opinions, however. Here is my reply. 1. I believe being nice would get niceness in return. I partly blame Sunday school that said, treat others how you want to be treated. I would much prefer that everyone just respect each other than go out of their way to be nice because God is watching, or some BS like that. I ain't a theist nor polytheistic, but I believe that if you need a singular mythical figure such as God to tell you to respect other humans, then you're not doing so well at that. Respect. I don't mean you have to be in scared subservitude to a select few meanies. That's not respect. That is fear, and whomever conflated that falsity to make you despise other humans should be ashamed of themselves. 2. That caffeine would make me shorter, so avoid it. I missed out on some good soothing cups of coffee that teenage me could have appreciated just because I was afraid of stunning my growth. Now, as an adult, I drink it infrequently to self-medicate when my ADHD and anxiety go haywire. It helps. 3. Maybe it's a case-by-case culturally thing, but I had it in my head that quiet people were considered subservient. So if I talk a lot and soft-dominate conversations, then I would be respected. Some consider that talking a lot is a sign of insecurity, and that selective silence and speaking in fewer words is to be more powerful and confident. 4. I used to believe anything about myself that I was told. Smart? Sure, yeah. It takes a lot of mental buffer to block out external opinions, and I can't say that's something that can be fixed instantaneously. Story 25. I used to think that mandatory arbitration was terrible and should be illegal to put in fine print. After serving on a jury on a civil trial, I'm convinced that jury trials are inherently unfair and should not be used. In my state, civil trials only have 6 jurors and only 5 have to agree. It's entirely possible to find 5 people out of a pool of 100 people who will believe anything. I would only willingly face a jury if I was guilty. Story 26. One thing I used to believe but now think is completely wrong is that multitasking is an efficient way to get more done in less time. Over the years, I've learned that multitasking often leads to decreased productivity and increased errors. Focusing on one task at a time allows for deeper engagement and higher quality results. Story 27. I used to think being in love meant it was crazy, obsessive, can't eat, can't sleep, and my partner should somehow know everything I need because they were the one, and the right one should know, and it's perfect. Now I know that being in love, for me, feels like safety to be every part of myself. Never feeling stupid or inadequate, forehead kisses and calmness when I'm overstimulated. Love doesn't have to slap you in the face the first time you meet them. It can be slow and steady, and growth is one of the best parts. Feeling like I want to be the best version of myself because of them. Knowing that if I communicate, we both benefit and can become closer by doing so. That he doesn't have to say a word and we can enjoy the silence together. Love is really beautiful with the right people. Story 28. I used to believe that elements were all made of the same atoms but just connected differently. I basically thought the differences between elements were that they were molecules. I was pretty surprised that each element was in fact made of a unique atomic configuration and wasn't merely the same atoms arranged differently. I was sort of right in that atoms are made of the same things, electrons, protons, and neutrons, but I was missing the part about how the number of protons in the nucleus really was the key to defining what an element's identity was. Story 29. When someone vents to me about something to respond with some kind of "come on, it's not that bad" response. I feel like people do this almost as an automatic response because lots of parents do this to children to get them to do what they want, dismiss their protests. But when you think about it, it's a really asshole thing to say to someone. It's invalidating their experience when all they're trying to do is be heard. Story 30. That my parents did me a favor by having much younger siblings and making me responsible for them, cooking dinner most nights, doing the washing, cleaning, etc. Sure, I learned some good skills, but it meant I turned into a pseudo-parent that then went away to university and left those kids high and dry. And I missed out on getting the actual love and care I needed from my parents as a teen and young adult because I was independent and grew up well before I should have. Story 31. That bad people are bad on purpose, like they sit around in their evil lair coming up with their evil plans, like the Grinch or something. Turns out bad people are just like everyone else. They make bad choices and do bad things, but for the most part, it's not part of some big evil plan. Story 32. I genuinely thought in high school that everybody wanted to be a multimillionaire. I was so wrong. Some people just don't want a lot of money, or a lot of people say they do, but very little really mean it. And I mean, very little amount of people are crazy enough to go out there and try to make millions and millions of dollars. I was wrong. I thought this was people's purpose for a very long time, LOL. Story 33. That the only reason people were poor was because they were lazy and entitled. Then I actually tried to learn about why poverty happens in a country like the US, and learned that that's not even close to the actual reason most people are poor. That's not to say there aren't poor people that got there because they're lazy and entitled, but just that most people aren't poor because of that. Story 34. That love lasts. With all the love and time and energy you put into your family, attempting to raise good, healthy, responsible, giving kids, you can try your hardest to not let them know how bad you had it as a kid and always strive to give them more than you had. First off, yes, I know I had a platter filled to the edges of that platter. When I was much younger, I promised myself I would never ever be like my mom on a huge list of hell no, I will never do's. No matter how damn hard I attempted to do good, be that good person I knew I was. I have failed at every corner with my kids. No one prepared me for the ultimate day when your babies are all grown up and will not even tell you WTF you did wrong. I'm just done. I can't take this hell. I've been living in it for so long. My marriage seems to be over or just not fulfilling for any aspect beneficial for me and my health. I've given everything and get very little back. I'm on the verge of completely being disabled. 2 spin surgeries have not helped, nor therapy. Husband won't stop seeing others. But I can't do the same. I have been a waitress for 16 plus years before we moved. 12 years ago, I attended some college but could not finish due to my intellectual inabilities. And my physical body started to take a nosedive. I just can't anymore. Fee Shrai for this I am, and will be fine eventually. I will not harm myself or others. Sometimes you just gotta get it off your chest. A story 35. I used to think the only thing that mattered in attracting the opposite was achievement, school, career, athletics, etc. And then was amazed when men who I perceived to be less successful than me attracted the same women I did, or even ones that weren't available to me. A lot of the time, it's because these men didn't hate themselves, were honest, and emotionally secure, while I wasn't. Story 36. I straight up didn't think that COVID was going to be a big deal. I was ready to dismiss it, especially after hearing where it was first reported. I naively thought that even Trump, the big orange dum-dum that he is, would make it clear it was a problem since he likes to rag on China. Well, oh boy, was I wrong. Obviously, I very quickly changed my tune as soon as actual data and reporting was being shared, but still, I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for that one. Story 37. That universities are about educating students. They are businesses looking to make money like any other corporation. ESP big ones. If you happen to get an education, great. But just because you graduated doesn't mean you actually learned anything. Faculty that used to care are burned out and handcuffed by administrative rules to the point they can't educate students. They can only present material and cross fingers and hope something is learned. Story 38. That plastic waste is a problem I should care about. If plastic or styrofoam or anything else is going to well-managed landfill, then it doesn't matter at all. It started off as oil in the ground, and it'll end up as far less label oil in the ground. Not applicable to say plastic going into the oceans or waterways. Story 39. That my ex ever loved me. She recently said the only reason we were together is because I was about to be homeless. Kinda already was never really went home unless to feed and water my cat. I can't unhear those words. I no longer believe she even wanted to date me. I only think she did it out of pity. Story 40. I thought different ways of making coffee gave basically the same result. I thought the difference of pour over an espresso was how dilute the resulting coffee was, so that if you took one and added extra water, it'd be the same. Then I actually started comparing them. Story 41. When I turned 18, I was so excited to grow up and see a world that wasn't like the one my abusive Pues family kept me trapped in. It was fun at first, but as I got further through college, I realized actually, yes, a lot of people are just like them to varying degrees in their mindsets and attitudes towards other people. Constant criticism and judgment, abuse of power. I believed the world wasn't like this. Now I believe it is. But that doesn't stop me from seeking the good in it and people who I can truly connect with. Story 42. That technology mainly improves the world. Was so optimistic about technology in the early 2000s that I ended up working in it. Got 2 grad degrees related to it. Now anytime any new technology starts getting press, I'm just like, what fresh new hell is this? Story 43. There was a short time when I saw that loose change movie online that 9/11 was an inside job. Then over a week or so, I started to think about it and then saw the Popular Mechanics video later on and some debates about it that made me realize that regardless of how slick it looked, it was a bunch of baloney. Story 44. One thing I used to believe was that success was mostly about talent, being naturally good at something. Over time, I've realized that this idea is largely mistaken. Success is much more about persistence, consistent effort, and adaptability than innate ability. While talent can give you a head start, it's dedication, practice, and the ability to learn from failure that makes the biggest difference in the long run. It changed my perspective on personal growth, where I now see challenges as opportunities to develop skills, rather than a measure of my abilities at a fixed point. Story 45. That being kind and gentle wasn't worth it because it puts you at a disadvantage. It doesn't. But to be kind, gentle, and successful, you have to recognize the actions of those that would see kindness as weakness, the strength to be steadfast when others would manipulate you, and the patience to wait for those who match your principles to walk into your life. Story 46. That raising a family is a beautiful and rewarding thing to do. Children don't have anywhere near the same experience that we had growing up, and that sense of village or community does not exist anymore. Kids are too busy in extended day programs and consuming screen time because mom and dad are tired and checked out. So even if you are trying to make the most of your child's young years, their peers are not available. It just makes me sad because they don't even know what they are missing. Story 47. That success equals happiness. I used to think that achieving certain milestones and goals would automatically bring happiness, but now I realize that happiness comes from within and from the relationships and experiences we cultivate along the way. Story 48. Absolutely. One thing I used to believe was that success was solely about hard work and determination. I thought if I just put in enough effort, I would achieve everything I wanted. However, over time, I've come to understand that while hard work is important, factors like opportunity, privilege, timing, and even luck play a significant role in success. It's not just about grinding tirelessly. Sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time and having the support systems in place. This realization has changed my perspective on how I measure success and has made me more empathetic towards others who are also striving to reach their goals. How about you? What beliefs have you reevaluated? Story 49. A ex-friend cared about me. He has twisted every happy memory into a bad thing. We literally spent every day together for 3 years, had 1,000 fun days thrifting. He has reduced our friendship to a few bad fights, most stemming from my insecurities. I know someday he will realize he is wrong. I cared for him and tried to support him, was always there for him no matter what he needed. I just hope he gets help so he doesn't destroy every relationship he has. He cannot handle it when someone unconditionally loves him, thinks they have to have a bad motive. Story 50. Hypothermia. One of the symptoms is actually feeling hot and wanting to remove clothes because you feel hot. This much is true. Not only does Google tell me, I've experienced it. Hyperthermia, I always believe the opposite. When you get so hot, you feel cold and start wrapping up. Turns out it's probably not true, as I can't find a single source. Not sure why I believe this. Story 51. That I had to grow up or man up. I would feel ashamed of things I was interested in if they were childish or immature. Growing up for me was realizing it's bull, and I don't care if my interests are childish, because to the people that told me that anything animated was childish. Story 52. That people are basically good, intelligent, and want to know more about discovering truths of the world. The truth is, a vast number of people are self-centered, want their world to stay exactly as it is, and only want more information that confirms what they already believe. People get violently angry if you question or criticize anything they believe to be true, and are largely incapable of even understanding the truth because they've been so misinformed. Story 53. One thing I used to believe was that success only came from following a clear linear path, whether it was in education, career, or personal goals. I thought if you didn't stick to a specific plan, you were bound to fail. Over time, I've realized that life is much more dynamic. Success can come from taking unexpected turns, embracing flexibility, and learning from detours. Sometimes the most valuable experiences come from things not going according to plan. What's your experience with this? Story 54. I used to believe that CEOs didn't deserve all the big fat paychecks. But some do. If a CEO you are paying $1 million can raise income by $1 million, then compared to the CEO gets paid $10 million, but raises income by $80 million, then it's a no-brainer. Sometimes you have to pay for talent and to save time. If you were the best at what you do, you should sell yourself short. Story 55. That this whole government, Hollywood, politics, sports, basically everything, is one big, powerful, money-hungry club that normal people will never and would never want to be in. It's all a facade, and anyone who has power in it was abused and abuses people. It's all a facade, a gross facade. Story 56. I used to think that intelligence was the most important factor in success. Over time, I've come to see that qualities like emotional intelligence, resilience, and adaptability are just as, if not more, crucial. Success often hinges on how well we navigate relationships and challenges, not just our raw intellect. Story 57. That conservative Americans care about protecting children. That being economically conservative is right. The more I learn, the more I realize how unfair a capitalistic system is, and ours specifically idealizes the top 1%, and that the American dream can make you a millionaire, when truly the American reality we have is built on classism and will collapse if we reject it. You can't keep growing if you run out of space to grow. Story 58. That billionaires and millionaires are what they are because they are more hardworking than the rest of the working people. Turns out 90% for the time all you need to be one is to have a ton of inheritance money from your rich parents. Invest said money to buy stocks, start a business, and the degrading humanity to exploit your own worker through class propaganda to trick them into thinking you are a god, and paid them way less than what they deserve. Story 59. Please don't downvote me on this. It wasn't more what I believed, but more what my disgusting biological mother, if you can call her that, was that people of color, she used derogatory words that I won't even say, would come over here and steal our jobs. I live in the UK. I was born in the 80s, and I remember her saying this when I was around 8 years old. Imagine that. Imagine someone telling a child that, I luckily didn't take that view, but at the beginning when I was a kid, I thought she was right. Because why would you not believe the words your mother says? Most ironic thing, she never worked a day in her life and claimed government benefits. Story 60. I used to believe that the average person was someone I would want as a friend. Or to put it differently, if I met someone new, there was a decent chance I should at least consider becoming friends. Turns out that the average person is not someone I would want in my life. And in fact, they would make my life worse by being in it. In fact, this is the case 9/10 times at least. My life has improved dramatically since realizing this. If you could be any age for the rest of your life, which would you choose? Story 61. 30. Always made me confused how people would worry about turning 30. Established enough in your career to have expendable income. Young enough to not have expectations put on you and freedom to do what you want. Still young enough to feel like your life is in front of you and you still have time ahead of you. Story 62. I'm surprised so many people are saying 20s. 10 was the best time of my life, no joke. School was great, lessons were fun and interesting. We were all at the age where we were mature enough to be friends, but too young for high school bitchiness. Very few home responsibilities, just a couple of light chores. I never cared about how I looked or even thought about it. I always had energy. Everything was fun and playing and toys and going swimming and being outside riding bikes. Never had to worry about money because that was for grown-ups to think about. Perfect age. Story 63. As a millennial, I predict flying automobiles, virtual reality travel, and the demise of print media, so long newspapers. I would prefer to be 25 if I could be any age for the rest of my life, since it's both young and mature enough to feel like I can do anything and still have a quick metabolism. In addition, I want to avoid ending up in a nursing home when I'm 90 years old. Story 64. The year in your 30s, right before you get that weird lingering injury that lasts forever, throwing your back out, that weird foot thing you have now. I feel like no one trusts people in their 20s to make real decisions. In your mid to late 30s, people at work start accepting your decisions more readily. You don't get IDD anymore, and you're basically healthy. I'll sacrifice a bit of hangover recovery for that. Partying is a lot less of a deal in your later 30s and 40s. Story 6534. I wasn't in great shape, but had the ability to be in much better shape. I hadn't become allergic to wheat or gluten yet. Otherwise, I would choose 28, but only because I didn't have hypothyroidism yet. I would only choose these ages if I had the wisdom that I have now. Except for my thyroid and gluten issues, I like where I am mentally, physically, and emotionally right now. So that would be a good age too. Story 6658. For reference, I'm 58 now. So far, every decade of my life has been better than the previous one. I'm looking forward to seeing what my 60s have in store, so this answer is subject to update. I'm getting back into triathlon. I haven't competed in one since my kidney transplant 6 years ago, and I'm hoping to do a full iron in the next few years. And I'm planning to retire in a few years, go out to the West Coast, US, get on a bicycle, and ride to the East Coast, so I think there's a good chance of keeping up the streak. Story 67. I would like to be 17, and I would like my mom to stay the same age she is now, so she will never die of her chronic illness and not have it be able to progress. Also wouldn't have to deal with the effect of turning 18 had on my PTSD. 17 was better than 18, and my health feels like it's getting worse than it had been. Story 6830. Not old, but no longer a kid. My life was panning out. I was making money and living well. Don't get me wrong, I still make money and live decently, but 30 was before all the medical issues and autoimmune disorders which have wrecked my body. Also, my grandparents were alive and my mom was doing well. Story 69, 19, 20, 21, one of those. I was too dull a teen for my peers to include me in the fun stuff. And post-university, I had a couple of failed relationships, and then everyone realized I'm awful. So I've been alone 15 years. But yeah, for 2 or 3 years, 20 years ago, a small number of people seemed to enjoy my company. Story 70. Probably the age I'm at now, 27 or maybe like early 30s. I've grown in wisdom a lot the last few years, and I hope that my 30s brings more growth. A runner-up age would be 19. I was absolutely an ass, but I did learn a lot at that age and had a lot of first experiences as a legal adult, but I wasn't adult enough where I really had real concerns. I lived at home for free and didn't have any real responsibilities other than my job, which was nice because I always had money to spend on whatever. I was able to party and do what I wanted most of the time. Story 71. I was about to say 25, but then realized I wouldn't want to be 25 if I couldn't keep the financial security, job satisfaction, happy home life, established hobbies, etc. I have now in my late 40s. I guess I just want to be less tired and have less joint pain, Melmo. Story 72. Gonna go with 28, 30. I'm 32 now, and I've noticed I'm not quite as resilient as I used to be. Smaller things I used to shrug off don't work that way. I got injured at work in the last year. I guess I'm just starting to feel like body isn't at a prime any night. Story 73. A whole bunch of people confusing physical age and personal growth. If I could have the body of a 26-year-old with the confidence/maturity/experience of my current age, I would jump on it. Screw 30 or 40. The small aches and pains don't enhance your life. They just make you aware of what you have to lose. I already know that. Wind back the clock and let me appreciate what I had again. Story 74. If you mean like, with all my thoughts and stuff that I have now, and still able to learn new stuff just the same as I can now, probably just 21 or whatever. Most energy and least body pains possible while still being able to do everything, LOL. If your brain is also stuck at that age, never developing fully, Then I guess I'd go with like tilde 25 tilde 30 when the prefrontal cortex plateaus in development. Story 75, I guess it depends which part of the age stays static. Is it physically I stay that age, but everything else progresses? Then some age in my early 30s where I'm old enough to be seen as an adult, but still physically fit. If it's mentally I stay the same age, but physically I progress, then probably late 30s, early 40s. Do my finances reset to that point in my life? I'll take the finances of a 110-year-old man who has had compounding on his side. Do I have to live the same year over and over, or do I progress through life with everything locked? Story 76. I don't know for sure because I'm not there yet, but probably like 34 from what I can see looking at the people around me. Mostly decent jobs and income, physically fit, and in general seems like a decent age. Less specifically, between 30 and 40 just seems nice. I guess an exact age depends on your way in life. Story 77. I'm only 27, but my body has got plenty of aches and pains. Herniated discs at up shoulder that got fixed but still aches most of the time, but at least better. Just for the pure physical ease, I'd probably say like 21 or 22 before everything hurt like it does now. Story 7836. I was still young enough that I had energy and no bad body parts. I was old enough to be making a decent living and to have accomplished a few things I was proud of. And I had a long enough stretch of life ahead of me, probably LOL, to not worry too much about the future. Story 7927. It's said to be the peak age for many athletes, old enough to have mastered technique, composure, and game match intelligence, and still young enough to be in the best physical condition possible. Outside of athletics, it's also a Goldilocks zone of still considered young with lots of potential, but also mature enough to handle most things in life and have your together. If you meet a company's CEO at a job interview and they ask how old you are, you're going to want to seem more mature if you're younger than 27. But if you're older, you're going to want to appear as if you have many fruitful and productive years ahead of you. 27 is right in that sweet spot. Anything around 27, 29 is really, but 27 just feels perfect in my opinion. Story 8022. Hands down will always be my answer. I had the best things in life you could wish for, and the rock bottom worst things all happen. But at 22, I was old enough to recognize and learn from those bad situations. And at 22, I was young enough to start over. Story 8143. My current age. Finally confident, and I now know who I am, what I like and don't, and what my boundaries are. Pretty well established in life, but still eager and able to take risks, healthy and active. Children are old enough they're relatively independent, but still live with us and want the occasional cuddle. Daily life is still stressful, but life, from an eagle-eye view, is pretty sweet. Story 82. Any age besides my current one, 24, all the responsibility of being an adult with roughly half of the required competence. I have a steady office job, knock on wood, but the threat of something happening to that stresses me to no end. Life is so uncertain right now. I know I'll make it one way or another, but I have apprehension for what is to come. I'm not holding my breath for great outcomes. Story 8329. Side note, I don't get all these people talking about aches and pains and all that at 30. I'm 36, done military service, worked a lot of labor jobs, 10 plus years in a steel mill, and still don't have all those problems. Now heartburn. The day I turned 30, my body said, congrats, here's a hiatal hernia and never-ending abilities to suffer after everything you eat that isn't air. Story 8423. Working, no debts, traveling the world. My school friendship group were still really close. Older men taking me for Ferrari rides and to VIP events. Younger men taking me on fun, spontaneous dates in the best shape without trying. Hangovers weren't a thing. Finally felt confident in myself. Surprisingly, had more confidence at work than I do now. Loving life. My dad and best friend were still alive. COVID hadn't happened. Take me back. Having said that, my kids are something I couldn't miss out on. Story 85. Men are just not real manly, at least till late 30s or even 40s. So 36, 37 sounds great. Women are unfortunately the prettiest 20 to 25. Really, a lot of men, if they are taking care of themselves, look best in early 40s. There is no man looking manly at 20. On the other hand, women are prettiest in early 20s. Story 8632. As a woman, that's the age I stopped trying so hard to please people, started building more confidence, and being more kind to myself. I accepted people for who they are and believed deeply that everyone is battling their own battles. It's also the fittest and most beautiful, in my opinion, I have ever been. Story 87. I'm 33 and just now getting my life together. Been wanting to go back and do my 20s over again because I feel like I wasted those years, but seeing so many answers here saying the 35, 50 range was their prime makes me happy and hopeful. My age pick to be forever would probably be somewhere in the 30, 35 range. Story 88, 8 years old. I want to be the age before the magic of toys disappeared. I just want to be by myself in my room with my toys creating stories and worlds. Could you imagine how amazing life as an adult would be if we still had this magic? Grown-ups inviting each other over for playtime, massive toy stores everywhere. Story 89. I'd say where I'm at being 32 right now. I can almost confidently say, I have my life figured out. I'm more conscious of how I go about life. I'm reaping some bad decisions that I've sowed, but I look at everything as positively as possible. Having quite a bit of debt, and especially having the misdemeanors that are on my criminal record, are nothing but lessons learned. Story 9030. Paraphrase the following text using the same input language and maintain the same number of words. I was in excellent condition. My mind was developed enough to maintain a sense of normalcy, yet remained youthful enough to embrace adventure. Story 91. I don't mind myself now at 39, but I'd probably say 30. I just had my appendix out and it was worse than my last C-section 8 years ago. So it's only because my body sucks more now. Harder to lose weight and stuff. Although 1920 was a really fun time for reasons. Story 92. My current age, 40-ish. I'm in great shape. Stopped drinking. I'm making good decisions. Finally kind of mentally healthy. Kids are still in the house, and we're doing all the sports and activities. I'm trying to take it all in and cherish these years. I know I'm living in what will eventually be the good old days. Story 9325. As a guy, I'm in prime physical age, presumably healthy and still having energy. If you went into a good career post-college, you'll have 2 to 3 years of experience, assuming you graduated in 4 and entered right after high school, which is enough to have a decent salary. Health good, finances decent, energy and mind still strong. Story 94-7. The last age I remember before really realizing just how complicated life would become. Mom was happy and still had a lot of spunk to her. She's now in her mid-60s, and I'm noticing more and more signs of aging, and possibly, Alzheimer's. Family has a bit of a history of alts, and have witnessed the decline in loved ones as it took over their brains. So it makes me sad knowing the mom I was raised by is no longer that same mom I had over 30 years ago. Grateful she's still around, though. I just don't like change. But who does when it comes to these things? Story 95. I was just thinking of when I was a kid, playing Game Boy next to my mother as she reads the newspaper before we sleep. I wonder if I was more loved than most and if that were a bad thing. If I could be any age for the rest of my life, I'd choose 18 or 21. Story 96. Maybe late 30s to early 40s. I was established in my career and marriage and still physically fit. Some of my kids were still pretty young, but by the time my 4th son was born, I mostly knew what I was doing. Physically, I could do most of what I did in my 20s, and the things I couldn't do weren't really important to me by then. By my late 40s, my body was starting to come apart to the point where now, in my early 60s, I have a laundry list of health issues. Story 97. My current age, or maybe a few years ago, I'm 57, but since I was about 40, I started making a lot of money and my anxiety finally went down. 50 was a great year, still fit and sharp. My life is very structured at that point. Wife is with me, planning retirement, traveling, but without the drama of my earlier life. The 20s sucked as I was clueless. Story 9821. I absolutely loved my college years, having the freedom and zero responsibility. My body was in the best shape it's ever been. I could eat whatever I wanted to, drink what I wanted to, have endless energy to work, go to class all day, and party all night. God, I miss it. Story 99. So my 44th to mid-45th years sucked. I burst both eardrums and have had 1 failed surgery, had a failed surgery on my arm, arthritis, my knee, bucket handle meniscus tear, and now waiting for surgery on that. But in the same year, I made the best money I've ever made. Significant strides to retirement, healthy, happy family, good vacations, both driving, both with the whole family. Work-life balance was spectacular. I even lost 80 pounds and weighed less than when I got married. As much bull as I was going through health-wise, I was feeling great. My wife finally felt fulfilled at work and has a job she loves and is well regarded by her peers. Then 2 days before my 46th birthday, I was laid off. So it really was the best of times and the worst of times. Anyway, as much as that period was bull, I'd still take it back there.